A very good afternoon to you all. This is the Ambassador, with me, your Ambassador, Jennifer Macau. Now, let's first of all check on the ongoing protests in Kenya. As tensions continue to mount in Kenya over the finance bill for 2024, through Western diplomats speaking out against the escalating protests and the police brutality. Despite the passage of the controversial bill in Parliament, calls for restraint and peaceful picketing have been made. President William Ruto has warned of the consequences for those inciting violence, declaring that all security measures would be deployed to restore calm. In a statement, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, former Kenya president, advised elected leaders to embrace dialogue and find solutions to the issues facing Kenyans. Here is the report.
As tensions continue to rise in Kenya over the finance bill for 2024, Western diplomats have spoken out against the mounting protests and police brutality. The controversial bill, which has sparked nationwide demonstrations, was passed in Parliament with 195 lawmakers voting in favor. President William Ruto has warned of the consequences for those inciting violence, declaring that all security measures will be deployed to restore calm. The protests have drawn criticism from President Ruto, who accuses them of being hijacked by organized criminals.
Kenya experienced an attack on its democracy, rule of law, and the integrity of its constitutional institutions
Against the finance bill continue to escalate.
At least 10 people have been killed after anti-tax protests stormed Kenya's parliament in Nairobi on Tuesday, with thousands of protesters taking to the streets across Kenya on the same day to demonstrate against a controversial new finance bill that would raise tax. The protests turned out violence in the capital of Nairobi, with demonstrators storming into the parliament building. Let's listen to what was happening there.
Come on, Ruto must go. Why does Rachel Ruto need 600 million? Why? Why? Yeah? Why? Yeah? Why? When we don't have medicine in the hospitals, when doctors cannot be paid, Ruto must go.
We are against this bill. We are rejecting the finance bill 2024. Do not amend. Reject the entire thing.
What's your name? What's your name? Ruto must go. Ruto must go. Ruto must go.
We are saying that they should not amend it. They should reject it in totality. Because the whole finance bill does not respect the people of Kenya, does not represent our interests, and we are saying no to the punitive finance bill 2024.
Kabisa!
Yes.
Kenyan President William Ruto stated on Tuesday that the security was his utmost priority after the protests against the bill to raise taxes descended into violence through the police firing on the demonstrators storming into the legislature, outmaneuvering the forces, storming the building shortly after the lawmakers passed the bill. President William Ruto called the violent scenes treasonous and outlining the demonstrations that had been hijacked by dangerous people. He accused protesters of trying to storm the State House in Nakuru and burning ruling party offices in Embu. Let's listen to what the president had to say.
I assure the nation that the government has mobilized all resources at the nation's disposal to ensure that a situation of this nature will not recur again at whatever cost.
The protest was sparked by the Finance Bill 2024, which aims to raise an additional $1.7 billion in taxes to help reduce Kenya's heavy debt burden. The government has already made some concessions, scrapping some proposed taxes on bread, cooking oil, and financial transactions. However, the protesters are demanding the entire bill be withdrawn. The Kenya Law Society stated at least 50 Kenyans, including activists vocal in the demonstrations, were abducted by suspected police ahead of the Tuesday protests. Kenya in the diaspora also joined in the protest against the Finance Bill 2024, gathering outside the Kenyan embassy in Washington, D.C. The demonstrators in the United and in the opposition, stating the bill would negatively impact their livelihoods and were determined to stand against what they perceived as unjust taxation. Complaints have also been organized in other cities with Kenyans at home and abroad, all united in their rejection of the controversial legislation, calling it punitive. Listen in.
Reject finance bill! Reject finance bill! Reject! Corruption must stop! Corruption must stop! Corruption must stop! We need accountability! We reject oppression! We reject oppression!
Tunataka kuona kwamba kuna usawa. Tunataka kuona wale wote ambao walipromisiwa ahadi ambazo walikuwa wamepewa zitimizwe. Ni vibaya sana kutumia Biblia. Vifungu vya Biblia eti kwamba nikienda pale nitafanya hili ama lile, lakini hawafanyi hayo yote. Kwa hiyo kama diaspora tunaomba kwamba hiyo bill ikataliwe moja kwa moja kwa jumla.
Gen Z oye! If these kids can do what they are doing today, if they can move the mountain, if they can move it to another level, we surrender to them.
Yes.
If they can give the destiny of our country to the future generation, we surrender. But one thing we don't want to know, we don't want to see those MPs that have been elected, those governors that have been elected and defeated, those senators that have been elected and defeated, those MCAs and women rep, they should go away and pave way for young men and women here, right now.
For the 204 MPs that voted for the bill to go through, we'd like to tell you very bravely, without any fear, that we are coming for each one of you. We are going to take you down. And I'd like to tell the Gen Z generation, the youths, our parents, to come together and to go take the signatures, and let's take these people out of parliament so we can have the power, so we can be able to control our resources, so we can be able to change our nation.
Reject finance bill! Reject finance bill! Reject!
Corruption must stop! Corruption must stop! Corruption must stop!
We need accountability!
The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres raised concerns over the violence and urged Kenyans and authorities to allow peaceful demonstrations, with the African Union Commission also calling on nations and stakeholders to engage in constructive dialogue. Let us move on to Haiti. With Haiti on the edge amidst the escalating gang violence for years, the imminent arrival of the multinational police force, led by the officers from Kenya, has sparked a range of emotions among the residents, from cautious confidence to frustration over delayed assistance. Haitians in the capital Port-au-Prince are contending with the prospect of international intervention to suppress the pervasive threat posed by the powerful criminal syndicates. Just hours before the Kenyan officers were scheduled to land in a notable development unfolded, a notorious gang leader, namely Barbecue, expressed his willingness to negotiate with the Haitian government. Listen in.
Just hours before Kenyan police officers were scheduled to land in Port-au-Prince in Haiti, notorious gang leader, popularly known as Barbecue, succumbed to pressure following a government-led raid in his base at the nation's capital. With the Kenyan police force further expected to limit Babecue's hold in the Caribbean nation, he showed a willingness to end his reign of terror. This would give the people of Haiti freedom to resume normal life as well as bring peace to the war-torn country. A resident of Haiti, Nathalie Francois, said she thinks the solution to Haiti's problems is the responsibility of the country's people, but she welcomes any help if it allows the people of Haiti the security they need to move freely in the country and feed themselves. However, others say the arrival of the external forces is met with frustrations over the prolonged suffering. The Kenyan police officers are expected to lead a multinational force tasked with confronting the powerful gangs that have held sway over significant parts of Haiti, particularly the capital. Reports indicate that these gangs control up to 80% of Port-au-Prince and have caused widespread displacement, leaving over 580,000 people homeless due to their territorial conflicts. The United Nations Security Council has authorized a deployment that includes police forces from countries such as the Bahamas, Bangladesh, Barbados, Benin, Chad, Jamaica, and Kenya, totaling to 2,500 officers. The initiative, estimated to cost around $600 million annually, aims to stabilize Haiti's security situation in phases.
Senegal has reported detecting COVID-19 among numerous pilgrims returning from their Hajj pilgrimage in Mecca at Dakar's Blaise Diagne International Airport, through the testing revealing 78 positive COVID-19 cases. Saudi officials announced on Sunday that over 1,300 individuals died during this year's Hajj pilgrimage, attributed to the death to extremely high summer temperatures. According to the Senegal's health ministry, these results were anticipated as returning pilgrims had been advised to wear masks and self-isolate. On Monday, Senegal implemented a voluntary COVID-19 screening test and reimposed the wearing of masks at Dakar's International Airport. Returning pilgrims fearing the virus was linked to the deaths of some of the Mecca travelers.
For me, a person who has visited this blessed city for over 33 years, I have never seen such extreme heat and conditions. We saw people every 50 yards struggling with the heat, full of perspiration. We found that it was difficult for the old, for the frail, and indeed for the fit and healthy as well.
A high risk of famine persists in Gaza, and the situation remains catastrophic as the war between Israel and the Hamas continues. According to a report released Tuesday by the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification (IPC), nearly 500,000 are projected to face devastating levels of hunger and the more severe level of the IPC scale, where people experience an extreme lack of food starvation and collapse of coping of the capacities. Let's get the report.
A high risk of famine persists across the whole of the Gaza Strip as long as conflict continues and humanitarian access is restricted. Only the cessation of hostilities in conjunction with sustained humanitarian access to the entire Gaza Strip can reduce the risk of a famine occurring in the Gaza Strip. According to the report's project, 96% of the population of Gaza, more than 2 million people, will face crisis, emergency, or catastrophic levels of food insecurity through at least the end of September.
Palestinians in Gaza are enduring horrifying levels of hunger and suffering. This is the highest number of people facing catastrophic hunger ever recorded by the Integrated Food Security Classification System, anywhere, anytime. This is an entirely man-made disaster, and the report makes clear that it can be halted.
The IPC's Famine Review Committee stated that the last few months have demonstrated that food and humanitarian access and malnutrition prevalence can change very quickly. The risk of epidemics is increasing, and 8 months of extreme pressure on the lives of the population make them much more vulnerable to collapse into famine.
Starvation is used as a weapon of war. Yes, starvation is used as a weapon of war. Let's say that.
The report encourages all stakeholders who use the IPC for high-level decision-making to understand that whether a farming classification is confirmed or not does not in any other manner change the fact that extreme human suffering is without doubt currently ongoing in the Gaza Strip.
Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, on Tuesday morning arrived at the U.S. District Courthouse in Saipan, the largest of the Northern Mariana Islands, for a landmark plea hearing. Assange is expected to plead guilty to one count of conspiring to obtain and disclose the U.S. national defense documents as part of the deal that will allow him to return home to Australia after a 14-year legal battle. The plea deal marks the end of the legal saga that has seen Assange spend more than 5 years in the British high security jail and 7 holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, fighting accusation of sex crimes in Sweden and battled extradition to the United States. Here's a report.
Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, yesterday arrived at a U.S. District Courthouse in Saipan for a landmark plea deal hearing. Assange, accompanied by former Australian Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, exited a car and walked past the media into the building. Assange left Belmarsh Prison in London on Monday evening after reaching a plea deal with the US, boarding a plane at Stansted Airport. The hearing in Saipan, the largest of the Northern Mariana Islands, was chosen due to its proximity to Australia and Assange's opposition to traveling to the continental United States. Julian Assange has been detained in London since 2019 and has fought a long-running extradition battle with the US over 18 charges related to the release of classified documents. He was initially granted political asylum by Ecuador in London in 2012, but was dragged from the embassy by UK police 7 years later.
This is a victory that cannot be denied. It is a victory of historical importance, not just to me, for my family, for my children, but for the independence of the UN.
Assange, 52 years old, has agreed to plead guilty to a single criminal count of conspiring to obtain and disclose classified US national defense documents. The deal marks the end of a legal saga that has seen Assange spend more than 5 years in a British high-security jail and 7 holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy in London as he fought accusations of sex crimes in Sweden and battled extradition to the US. Julian Assange is expected to be sentenced to 62 months, equivalent to the time he has already served at the hearing in Saipan. After the hearing, Assange will fly to Canberra, Australia, where he will arrive on Wednesday. The Australian government, led by Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, has been pressing US President Joe Biden for Assange's release.
And that international news brings us to our first break. Next, we'll talk about the Iran upcoming election. This is after Ibrahim Raisi passed on through helicopter crash. Who are these candidates? Stay tuned for more. And ICC issued an arrest warrant for the Russian leaders. We'll keep you more updated on this issue. While Israeli gallant urged United States to prevent Iran nuclear weapons. Stay on board to be able to learn more. We'll also check on the diplomatic tensions between Israeli and Lebanon, topics you can't afford to miss. We have this and more lined up for you shortly after the break. Stay tuned with us.
So through the 4 gospel books, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, John, we can know the heart of Jesus in depth.
그리고 우리가 느끼는 그 예수님을 성경을 통해 느낄 수 있어서 너무 감사합니다.
And the Jesus that we can feel him through the scriptures, and I'm very thankful about that. Jesus Christ came to this earth for our sins.
지셨고,
he carried our sins.
십자가에 못 박혀 죽어 죄의 형벌을 당하셨고,
and he was crucified, and he received the punishment for sins.
무덤에 들어가셨다가,
and he was put into the tomb.
사흘 만에 부활하셨습니다.
and resurrected in 3 days.
이것이 우리가 말하는 복음입니다.
This is the gospel that we speak.
예수님께 우리 죄를 위해 죽으신 이야기.
About how Jesus died for our sins. The purpose of Jesus being crucified.
우리 죄를 담당하기 위하여 십자가에 못 박혀 죽으셨습니다.
He was crucified to pay for our sins.
예수 십자가에 못 박혀 죽으심으로 우리 죄가 분명히 씻어졌는데.
And through Jesus being crucified, clearly our sins have been washed clean.
참 안타깝게도 많은 사람은 여전히 죄인이라고 말합니다.
However, unfortunately, many people still say that they are sinners.
Welcome back. You are still watching the Ambassador GBS Global, and we are glad to have you join us today. Iranians will vote in a snap presidential election on Friday to choose a successor to Ibrahim Raisi following the death in an helicopter crash, a contest said to be dominated by security hardliners who shared his uncompromising anti-Western views. The president runs the country day to day, but real power on issues such as Iran's nuclear program and its foreign policy remain in the hands of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who analysts stated seeks a fiercely loyal president who he can trust can be able to lead the country. Here is more report on the same.
5 hardliners and 1 low-key moderate were cleared to run for president by Iran's hardline constitutional watchdog, the Guardian Council, out of 80 who registered to enter the contest. The council, which screens candidates for their political and Islamic qualifications, is a 12-strong panel of clerics appointed Islamic jurists nominated by the judiciary chief and approved by parliament.
The Islamic Republic has enemies. One thing that helps the Islamic Republic overcome its enemies is the elections. If a good turnout is seen in these elections, then it will make the Islamic Republic proud.
The 6 candidates faced a 4-hour live debate, vowing to address the financial challenges affecting the country's 85 million people. Individuals seeking election to Iran's presidency or parliament must receive approval from the Guardian Council, which vets candidates to ensure they adhere to the principles of the Islamic Republic. All 12 members of the council, 6 clerics and 6 jurists, are directly or indirectly appointed by Khamenei. If no candidate wins at least 50% plus 1 vote of all ballots cast, including blank votes, a runoff round between the 2 top candidates is held on the first Friday after the election results is declared. The Guardian Council bars women from standing for president, although some top clerics and human rights lawyers argue that the constitution does not exclude them.
The International Criminal Court of Justice, ICC, has issued arrest warrants for Russia's former defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, and the chief general staff, Valery Gerashimov, accusing them of directing missile strikes on Ukraine's power infrastructure from October 2022 to March 2023. These attacks are alleged to have targeted civilian objects and caused significant harm to civilians, constituting war crimes and crimes against humanity. Despite Russian non-cooperation, ACT does not recognize the ICC jurisdiction, and this move underscores the international community growing condemnation on Russia's invasion on Ukraine, which began in February 2022. The Russia Security Council dismissed the ICC actions as part of the West hybrid warfare against the country's Shoigu, recently removed from the ministerial position and appointed to Russia Security Council as Gerasimov, who remains in high military role, are unlikely to face trial. The ICC actions highlight the continued efforts to address the war crimes amidst the ongoing conflicts. Pentagon spokesperson Pat Ryder refused to comment on reports that Biden administration was considering allowing United States military contractors in Ukraine. When asked about the difference between this and having the United States troops on the ground, Ryder stated the President and the Secretary of Defense had been clear that the United States troops would not fight in the war in Ukraine. The U.S. Defense Secretary recently spoke with his Russian counterpart, underlining on the importance of communicating during the ongoing conflict. Let's get the report.
Secretary Austin also spoke by phone today with Russian Minister of Defense Andrei Belousov. During the call, the Secretary emphasized the importance of maintaining lines of communication amid Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine. The last time Secretary Austin spoke to his Russian counterpart, then Russian Minister of Defense Sergei Shoigu, was on March 15, 2023. A brief readout will be posted to defense.gov.
There's a report out that the Biden administration is considering allowing U.S. military contractors in Ukraine to help maintain U.S.-provided weapon systems in Ukraine. Without getting into hypotheticals of what could be decided, what's the difference between doing this and having U.S. military boots on the ground?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Liz. What I'd say right now is just I'm not going to comment on any reports of internal discussions or proposals that may or may not be under consideration. You know, the bottom line is the President and the Secretary have been clear that we're not going to send U.S. troops to fight in Ukraine, and that won't change. So I'll just leave it there. Okay. Sir.
Regarding the DoD Inspector General report on tracking funds to China for pathogen research.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen hailed the start of the EU accession, with talks of Ukraine and Moldova a significant and transformative moment. The final launch of the negotiation was marked by intergovernmental conferences in the Luxembourg, with Ukrainian and the Moldovan delegations in attendance. Von der Leyen acknowledged the challenging path ahead of the stated, and it was filled with immense opportunities for the two countries and the EU. Experts warn against exaggerated expectations, noting potential obstacles from the members like Hungary. The accession process is expected to be rigorous and demanding as Ukraine and Moldova work to meet the EU membership criteria. Here's the report.
It is very good news that today the European Union opens accession negotiations with Ukraine and Moldova. We stand at the threshold of a significant and transformative moment for these two countries and for our Union. And we celebrate the values and principles that bind us together. The European Union has always been more than a political and economic union. It is a testament to our collective aspiration for peace, for security, for democracy, and for prosperity. The people of Ukraine and Moldova have demonstrated their unwavering commitment and determination to be part of this project. Even in a time of war and turmoil, they have started extensive reforms. They know that their journey will be rigorous and demanding. The accession negotiations are designed to prepare the candidates for the responsibilities of membership. And this is why there are no shortcuts. We embark on these negotiations in a strong spirit of openness, engagement, and commitment. The path ahead will be challenging, but it is also filled with immense opportunities for Moldova and Ukraine, as well as for our entire Union. Together, we can forge a larger, more dynamic, and forward-looking Europe. So I wish you a very successful start of the accession negotiations. Thank you.
Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has urged the United States to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons, warning that time was running out. During a visit to the Pentagon, Gallant called Iran the greatest threat to the future of the world and stressed the need for the continued U.S.-Israeli cooperation to counter the threats posed by Iran and its allies. The U.S. and Israel are set to convene at the Strategic Consultative Group meeting in Iran in mid-July to rehearse their joint approach towards Iran and Tehran. Let's get the report.
And Secretary Austin, it is my honor to be here in the Pentagon. Mr. Secretary, since Hamas launched its brutal attack on October 7th, you were the first to fly to Israel on October 13th. You stood with us then, and you stand with us today. The people of Israel will never forget these moments. The President, the administration, and you personally, Mr. Secretary, have been with us since day one. This includes working together to defend Israel against a massive attack by Iran and its proxies. as you mentioned. Hamas. In the north, we are determined to establish security, changing reality on the ground, and bringing our communities safely back home. We are working closely together to achieve an agreement, but we must also discuss readiness for every possible scenario. Nuclear weapon. Above all, we must discuss our extraordinary ties, projecting power together, discussing areas of disagreement as friends do, and standing strong together in the face of attacks, from missile attacks to diplomatic attacks on the global arena. Our friends and our enemies see this room and understand our power. We have a lot to discuss, Mr. Secretary. Thank you very much.
Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant confirmed to the United States Secretary Antony Blinken that Israel preferred a diplomatic resolution to the ongoing tensions with Hezbollah along the Lebanese border. According to the State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller, the U.S. believes a diplomatic solution is possible in the interest of all parties, particularly in the tens of thousands of Israeli and the Lebanese families displaced due to the hostilities. Washington has been pressing Israel to avoid a major war against Hezbollah, urging a diplomatic resolution to the conflict. The U.S. has reiterated its support for Israel in case of war initiated by Hezbollah, aligning with Hamas' interests, but warned Hezbollah that it could not hold Israel back if the escalation continues to unfold. Let's get the report.
In the past where there have been deconfliction issues and you've seen strikes on convoys by the IDF, and you've had other incidents where convoys have been diverted by Hamas. That's not what the current problem is. The current problem is they're being attacked by criminal elements inside Gaza.
There seems to be a lot of concern that the UN is going to pull out of Gaza and not halt its relief assistance operations there.
So there is aid that is moving, both commercial trucks and then humanitarian aid that is moving from Kerem Shalom.
Well, is humanitarian aid on the commercial trucks?
There's commercial trucks that include food and other humanitarian goods, but they're sold on the market, in the free market inside Gaza, and those have been moving.
The free market.
It is a free capitalist market for what's worth. There are markets in Gaza where these goods are sold. Okay. And there's been a fairly substantial amount of commercial activity, but that in no way accounts for all the need, because there are obviously a lot of people in Gaza who don't have access to money, don't have access to any way to pay for those goods. And so we need to see humanitarian assistance sustained too. And that has slowed out of Kerem Shalom because of this breakdown in activity.
Try to, figure out.
And that international news brings us to the end of our Ambassador GBS Global. It's been a great pleasure having you on board with us, joining us to the end. Here at the Ambassador, we continue to bring you the latest updates and the global developments as you keep it locked with us. Have been your Ambassador Jennifer Macau, and I'm looking forward to seeing you here at the Ambassador tomorrow, same time, same place, at 1 p.m. And may you all have a superb and the most beautiful and a wonderful afternoon. Stay safe.